evening, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching TV Asia. This is our weekly talk show which covers the current affairs top story of the week. You are watching this show live from the studio of TV Asia from Brisbane. I'm really thankful for the team working at the back for this program, and I'm also thankful to the team which I have. As usual, in my panel, in my program, I have the two expert panelists, and I'm thankful to Professor Pitman. Every time he's with us. I'm equally thankful to Dr. Bernard Malik. So let's start our agenda of the show today. Dr. Bernard Malik, thank you very much for us. You are always very kind with the TV Asia. You always spend time. Dr. Bernard Malik, let's start our top stories. And our top story today is President Donald Trump impeachment. And now almost, I think the process is finished and results are clear. And let me, before going back to Dr. Bernard Malik, I met few people, and he's one of the only person who always supports Trump. And he mentioned that this impeachment is going to have no results, and they can't stop Donald Trump. And it might possible this impeachment may rise or give another raise value to the president in future. Let's know from him that how he knows, Dr. Bernard Malik, how you know that there is nothing going to be happen after this impeachment. And before this one, I would like from you to explain the results and process for our viewers.
Thank you, Mr. Zaidi. Results came on very predictable lines. I knew right from the start, and many people who were interested and are interested in American politics know that nothing was going to come out of it. It was a wasteful exercise of taxpayers' money. Process was rushed through in few days. They rushed through it. And now President Trump might come back with more power. He might run again in 2024. The process that took place, 7 Republican senators voted to impeach President Trump.
Yeah, absolutely. That was different. That's the change.
Yes, it was a change. And you needed 67, so it didn't work. Also, he was the first president who got impeached twice.
Twice, yes.
And both the times acquitted. He was also the first president who got impeached after he had left the office.
Right. So now 7 his party members did not give, or they give the vote against him. Professor Pitman, how you are looking from your analyst side that why Donald Trump impeachment was not gone successful against him, and why do you think that his own party people voted against him?
One of the discussions in the media in America over the 7 Republicans who supported it was that they were considered patriots. But when you read the reasoning behind it, their major reasoning was that they believed President Trump needed to be held accountable for his actions, more so than anything else. So their crossing the floor to the Democrats was more about a principle of government. The issue then came down to the party machinery, where they needed far more Republicans to support it. And the Republicans, of course, saw it as a political ploy and didn't believe it was of any great advantage to the nation to go further with the impeachment. So the decision ultimately of the Senate was that the majority said that the impeachment shouldn't go any further, and that Donald Trump is basically able to run for politics, a political position again, and he can continue to represent the voters that he believes support his views about how government should be run.
Right. Dr. Bernard, do you think that this impeachment was a political impeachment, or it was a real impeachment? Because sometime in past programs you mentioned that there are some actions was done by Donald Trump which was not liked by the publicly. So do you think that it was a political move?
I think given the circumstances, yes, absolutely, it was a political move. I know President Biden.
Right.
He comes from my hometown in Newark, Delaware. He lives in Wilmington. I have a business in Wilmington. Very popular guy. I hold him as a statesman. I hold him in very high esteem.
Right.
And I felt that President Biden would have shown more grace. As soon as he came to power, he would have said, okay, bygones are bygone. I think President served his term well. He made some mistakes, but I want to bring peace and harmony and unity in the country. Let's forget about impeachment. Let's move on. We got so much work to do, and let's get the country straight to where we want it.
So, but one thing, Dr. Bernard, that okay, it means that if something not done good from Donald Trump, but after the getting power by Mr. Joe Biden, they still keep interest to punish or keep him away, which is not a good move, correct? This you mean?
Yes. I think now if you see all the presidents, the first day of taking office is a day that has become a sports.
Right.
All they do is they sign off, okay, when President Trump came, he signed off everything that President, what was his name?
Trump.
No, not before Trump.
Obama.
Obama. Anything that President Obama had done, Trump came and undid it.
Right.
Same thing, anything that Trump had done, first day, President Biden undid it. So it's like sports. They just want to enjoy and the people to cheer them up and say, oh, great job, great job. I think being president is more serious responsibility than just undoing it. It's more so what they can do than what they can undo.
Professor, he just mentioned about a sports game doing these things, but I believe there was a very good move done by Mr. Joe Biden because especially the restriction on the families, you know, they visited, especially the Muslim countries restriction. He finished, plus the children, they were, they were separated from the family. That also, I think, a good decision. So how you look, Joe Biden, these moves, undoing what action was done, similar like Dr. Bernard mentioned.
Look, I think one of the dilemmas in politics now is because parties change regularly now, that there's no continuity or constancy about how people's lives are affected.
Right.
So one moment you've got the steel mills and the coal in full operation. 4 years later, they're all stopped again.
Right.
You get the social justice group who were deprived of finances to help support those who are disadvantaged for 4 years, and in the next 4 years it's reversed.
Right.
Abortion issues I see have been changed again. So the problem is the majority of the public don't know if they're on this side of the bed or on that side of the bed.
Right.
And because it's constantly changing, different minority groups get benefits, but then they lose it, and then the next group get it. And so the dilemma for the American citizen is, am I in or am I out?
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's the issue that Dr. Malik's talking about, is that if you're constantly changing things, people's lives can't make progress because they don't know where they stand.
So you mean this time the current progress is very slow?
Well, the problem is for a certain group of people in America under one administration made major headway, and then it was reversed. So they basically stopped. Another group progressed. Government really should be about the good of all people, not just one group or the other. The problem is that I think more and more people want to see the differences because there are advantages to that minority group as against the majority. And perhaps there is probably too much minority politics now.
So, what exactly you would like to say about the minority politics?
Well, the minority are the group that governments look towards to try and get them over the 50% so they can be in power. So they will offer policies that support the minority group to get the votes. In America, of course, it's not compulsory voting, so they're trying to target groups over there to vote, which means if they can get the minority and give them policies that, or financial benefits to support them, that then gets them into power.
Right.
But then the next government comes along and says, I don't support that minority group, so I'm withdrawing their funding. So then they say, well, we're now not able to do what we'd like to for the next 4 years.
Mr. Malik, Professor just mentioned about the improper use of the funding, or again, playing politics on the funding. Did you see the change after Mr. Joe Biden ruling that the COVID, they say that it's going to be handled differently? The vaccines distribution, they're going to look differently. And plus the major decision, international relation, especially with Saudi Arabia. How you're looking these moves from Joe Biden? Because before Joe Biden also you are looking the Trump moves, how internationally he's doing and how COVID and vaccine is doing.
Look, President Biden was the chair of Senate Foreign Relations.
Right.
Very well versed in his foreign relations policies.
Right.
He has a lot of friends at the international community.
Right.
Big presidents, prime ministers, all that. I think he'll be very successful when it comes to foreign policy.
Right.
When it comes to giving funding, all the governments do some kind of appeasement, whether it's minority appeasement or majority appeasement or a certain sector in the society that they want to appease.
Right.
And that's how the politics is. That's how they get re-elected again. So
Right.
This is whether President Trump does or President Obama did, or whether President Joe Biden does, they're all the same.
They're all the same. And how are you looking? Because, last week they make a decision that for Saudi Arabia, they don't like to continue a lot of selling of the weapons, and they will keep eyes that how the internal policy is going on there. It was completely different in the Trump time.
America has to sell weapons. It's part of the foreign policy.
It's part of the foreign policy.
So if one president comes and says, no, we'll sell, the other says no. In fact, President Trump got blamed for a lot of stuff. He was the only president when America did not go into war.
Right.
Okay. Under President Clinton, they went into war. Under President Bush, they went into war. Under President Obama, they went into war. He was the only guy. No wars were fought under him.
Absolutely, but it's a big consumable grounds in Yemen, and they stop and they say now they start raising the question about in Yemen. They say we don't like to see and we are not supporting this decision. How are you looking this move?
I think it's a good move.
It's a good move.
Good move, yes.
Yeah, because it's impacting a lot of family.
Anytime you stop a war, it is good.
It is good. It is good.
I say this with the something back home.
Yeah.
If India and Pakistan decided to be friends, we would not have to go to US and we would not have to come to Australia.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Reason being, we spend probably 30-40% of our budget on defense.
Yeah.
Which is not needed.
Yeah.
Friends, same culture,
Yeah.
same customs.
Yeah.
Why do we have to fight? And for what reason? No. You fight if you can win. Nowadays, all the countries are so well versed in their nuclear weapons, no one wins.
Right.
There will be no more winning of wars in the world if both are nuclearly armed nations.
Right.
So now I think we should go towards peace. Let's give peace a chance all over the world.
All over the world. Professor Pitman, regarding the Yemen decision, again, the world is appreciating how you're looking. Does it was a wrong support from the Trump office or Joe Biden office done a good move, or it was necessary that time and now it's necessary this time? Need basis?
Just before I comment on that, I think Pakistan and India do one thing very well together.
Now?
Yes, on the border, the tourists like to see the soldiers march up
Yeah.
and do the
Yeah. Ceremony.
the ceremony.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love watching the ceremony.
Okay.
So I think they got a good thing going on the border between the two military. I think one of the things people probably don't understand is that in American politics, up until probably World War II or post-World War II, America had a policy not to get involved in foreign affairs.
Right.
Now, that didn't mean they didn't do trading
and weapons,
and whatever else they did, but generally they stepped out. And certainly the Americans after World War One really did not want to go back to Europe because Europe's been a country at war for centuries. They've just fought and fought and fought. And the Americans saw themselves as getting out of England, getting out of the religious turmoil that was occurring in England and in Europe, and they settled their country to be a free country, religious freedoms, individual freedoms, and so they had a policy of stepping back. I think to a degree, Trump reintroduced that. He said, well, if there's problems in Europe, why aren't you looking after yourself more?
Yeah.
And in the Middle East, between the Arabs, why can't you sort out your difficulties? Why do we have to go over there and spend billions of dollars providing aircraft carriers and planes and everything? Why can't you sort out your own differences? So I think he stepped back. The opposite approach now is with the Democrats is we want to be part of the global interaction. We want to have a place in the world stage.
Right.
So they've got back into the United Nations, they've got back into the World Health Organization, they've got back into partnerships with the conservation areas. So it's different ideologies.
Right.
And I think the Trump ideology had great merit for the Americans.
Right.
Whether or not the globalization is a good approach. And when you look at United Nations history and the League of Nations, they have never stopped wars. If anything, all they've done is pacify warring parties.
Right.
So whether or not Trump was right in his approach, I think is going to be judged by history, but I think there was a lot of merit. The problem that America now has is it's going to be entangled again with global conflicts and national issues, and they're going to spend a lot more money in that space.
Dr. Malik, he mentioned a decision on the merit by Mr. Trump, and you believe that Donald Trump was, let's say, he just mentioned that he was really sincere with Americans. I'd like to put you on the hot seat. Okay, with his time and with your knowledge, you are also American. Do you think that he was taking care much of the Americans, or he's taking care much of the world? Which side he was more sincere?
He was, okay, let me put it. You asked a very interesting question. I think he was very sincere to the world. That included Americans too. If you see, he was not interventionist.
Right.
He did not intervene a lot of times.
Right.
He says peace through strength.
Right.
People knew who America was. They knew what America was capable. And that ensured peace. You see what happened? As soon as Trump left, in Myanmar, Burma,
they
had a coup. And President Biden intervened, but nothing happened.
Okay.
So if you see what happened in North Korea that time, they backed off.
Yeah,
backed off. As long as President Trump was there, nothing happened. He in fact went there, he brought them together, peace. At least there was no war. Okay. Same thing in Middle East. A lot of these people who were making noises, calm down. Because he meant business. He did not mean politics. If he tells you behave, you better behave. Or he's capable of making you behave. So and when it comes to Americans
and the rest of the world,
he stood up on his grounds of trade with China, and he said, okay, there is a big trade deficiency, a big trade imbalance. No, he said, let's make it even. So Americans were getting more votes, more jobs at home. Jobs were not being outsourced to India and to China. So Americans won. You had to give the man some time.
Right.
Probably a year and a half or 1 year of his term was all COVID. So he couldn't have done much. But I'm sure if he had come back again, he would have improved.
I think it's a good point, but let me ask you the similar blue American and red American. So, he mentioned that he covered Donald Trump that he look after both sides, internally Americans and externally rest of the world. But when Joe Biden came, he says there is no blue American and there is no red American. Number one, who raised the color of the Americans is from the Donald Trump, or it was a theory they made by themselves?
Look, every American president will always argue that they're for the people. The reality is that politics is always sectional. You can't avoid it. I imagine it's sectional. Pakistan, it would be sectional. Here in Australia, it's sectional. What I mean by sectional is it's ideology. One group believes in this ideology, another group believes in that. Sometimes there is middle ground where they'll come to an agreement, but generally speaking, you will have the two. In America, they've always had the Republicans and the Democrats.
Right.
And the ideology has fought for many years and has been problematic, and I think will continue to be problematic. What the American president's got to do is make sure the pendulum doesn't swing too far to one end of their ideology. He's got to keep it in the middle.
In the middle. Yeah.
And if he doesn't keep it in the middle, then this group here on the other side of the pendulum will react horrendously at the next election. And again, that's why I said the pendulum swings too much and too widely. Whereas if you can keep the middle ground with American politics, then the swinging voter or the voter who doesn't mind being a Democrat or Republican is happy to support whichever side. But I think what happened was the Democrats swung it too far one way. And then when Trump came, the other group said, no, we've had enough of that. We're going this way.
Right.
And Trump knew that. Trump knew that. Whoever his advisors were seemed to have a sense of what was going on at the grassroots.
Right.
And he won the election on that basic ground, that they'd had enough of this side.
Dr. Malik, a concept in the international world, American is a super people. Do you think it was defined by themselves and they've been brought up with the same concept that wherever American goes, like Dr. Malik or anybody else, they are the super human beings and rest of the one is not. Because every time, and every time they says we are American. So what exactly concept behind it? First, let me ask you first, then I'll ask him.
I will relate it to what we come from.
Right.
In India, if your small child, 2-year-old child or 4-year-old child climbs on sofa, the whole family screams at him, get down, you will get hurt, you will get hurt. That's the mentality we grew up with. We are not adventurous. We are overprotective. Americans on the other side are, wow, get out.
Get out.
Yeah. You will not find, like we do back home, that people after +2 or after high school or after senior secondary school going to uni. No. In US, after they finish their high school, they get out to see the world. Very adventurous. 18-year-old kid just going on world tour, and not with a lot of money. It's not a 5-star accommodation. I was amazed in I think 2003. I was in Malawi.
Right.
The president of Malawi was a good friend of mine.
Right.
So one of the ministers had taken us for a ride far into Malawi countryside. And we were driving, we had a big 4-wheeler, and I saw a white guy walk down the road.
Right.
Out in jungle. So we stopped, me and my wife, we both stopped. We asked him, hey, how are you, this and that. He was American. And a 19-year-old American guy who was out there, nowhere in the world. No fear, nothing, just walking around. You look at the psychological strength of these people.
Yeah, that's why.
Very
Yeah,
strong,
yeah, yeah.
very strong.
How it's coming?
That's how they're brought up.
Right.
They're brought up strong. And then also independence. In our culture, you could be 30-year-old, you still are stay at home.
Right.
No, not in US. No, so not in Australia too. At 18, if you're staying with parents, start to pay rent. So they get out and find job. When they're 14, 15, while they're in high school, they go and find job. When they're below 14, they go and mow somebody's lawn. They get $20. They go and have party.
But Malik Sahab, I'd like to stop here. Now, this is the same concept followed by the Australian also,
yes,
American also, but they did not feel we are American. You know what I mean? The same concept after 16, 18, they are going out, they have the life, they earn money, they start doing everything. But they still does not have the same confidence which American has. Why?
May I say?
Yeah.
And I hope Professor Pitman doesn't knock me off when we finish it.
Yeah.
There is something called copy and there is something called original.
Yes, Pitman.
In Australia has been a good supporter of America for many years.
Right.
But on occasions, when the Americans become too arrogant on an issue, the Australians react. For example, in World War II, Australia was probably under major threat of invasion by Japan. The Australian Army was actually in India and couldn't leave India because Mr. Churchill wanted them back in Europe.
Right.
But the Prime Minister in Australia wanted them here. When they arrived back, General MacArthur arrived, and General MacArthur knew the capacity of America. He knew that they would get their navy back together, and they had a tremendous fighting power, and they had the resources. And here in this town of Brisbane that I live is where there was a meeting between the generals of Australia and MacArthur and his generals. And the Australian general said, we will bring our defences back to the Brisbane line. So the line, and General MacArthur said, no, we're not going to meet them here in Australia. We're going to meet them up in the Philippines and New Guinea and that. And the Australian general said, well, how's this all going to happen?
Yeah.
And on a couple of occasions, General MacArthur was very critical of the Australian soldiers as not being courageous and fighters like the American soldiers. And that really upset some of the Australian generals and that. And it turned out the Australian soldiers were very good soldiers and fought with the American soldiers. And certainly even now, from the Vietnam War and the Korean War as well, the Americans have high regard for the Australian fighting soldier, that they are very courageous people.
Good.
But we don't have the wealth or the capacity for military force. We're a defensive nation, not an attacking nation.
Right. Okay, viewers, this is our first topic, and I believe that we know that manufacturing industry has a big scope in all over the world, and it is important for every country if they have the facility working in manufacturing industries. The countries, those depends on the manufacturing, everyone knows that they have a lot of jobs, they have good income, they have a good skill opportunity for the rest of the world. Unfortunately, in Australia, manufacturing industry is really dying for so many reasons. The cost of the wages are, especially the skilled wages, are high. However, there are a lot of migrants are coming and they are fulfilling all the needs of country. But it's still, but in the COVID time, this manufacturing side was get more difficult to operate. But last month, Prime Minister Scott Morrison, he visited Darwin and few other facility, and he started and he appreciated and he supported businessmen for operating the manufacturing facility, and they trying to create the job. So I like to ask Professor Pitman and Dr. Malik, both are businessmen, and Professor Pitman is already engaged making the policy. He was part of it, and Dr. Malik also part of the policy. So now you see that Mr. Scott Morrison is visiting and appreciating the business holders, those are enhancing their facility. What do you think that after in COVID, how the manufacturing facility can sustain?
Australia has always had a policy, and it's probably from the British era, where we send our raw material to England to process it and they send it back. But probably about 30 years, 40 years ago, when there was a Labor government in, they connected to China, and more recent times to India. And they've said, look, it's cheaper to send our raw goods over to those two countries, let them manufacture it and send it back.
Right.
Now, what Mr. Morrison's picked up is that we're so dependent on China,
right,
that when the COVID hit, we didn't have the goods. So he's basically saying to the Australian businessman, well, why can't we produce it here? With technology now, you don't have to have quite as much human involvement. So use technology, but then try to create employments through technology in the use of it. And since COVID has arrived here, quite a few businesses have started producing things that we let India produce and China produce. So there's been a major shift. I wouldn't say a huge shift, but a shift to start manufacturing here. Certainly, I'm not sure that China will be in our mix as much, but we may move into India. Because India has a culture, has a democratic society, similar values to Australia, plus it's a great market area as well with a huge population. So Australia may shift its trading capabilities to India. And of course, Australia has one of the biggest iron ore deposits in the world, biggest uranium deposits. They have mineral resources that hasn't even been considered totally. It's got oil, although it's not heavy grade oil. It's got gas in unlimited supply. So that with a partner that really wanted to work with us, like India, I believe India could certainly benefit from Australia, whereas China has, but has probably got to a point where the relationship probably will never be quite the same again. So there's nothing stopping us here doing steel manufacturing and working with India to do that, and looking at some of those capabilities.
Mr. Malik, I'd like to connect from his point of view. Look, you are also producing the skilled manpower through the automobiles, diploma, certifications, and again, they need some manufacturing industry. Similarly, some other your products are used in the soft industries, but for the manufacturing industry, these are the skilled paper. So now, if from the beginning, that was the original concept, they are depending on other countries for the manufacturing factory, they did not find a solution to reduce the manufacturing cost. Do you think it's a failure?
Not failure. I'll tell you what has happened here. I think we made China into a giant ourselves purposely.
Right.
I went to US in 1993, and I remember China was blamed for human rights violations day in, day out, every day.
Every day.
Right? And President Clinton still went ahead every year, gave China a most favored nation status.
Right.
That basically meant that for goods coming out of China were not taxed.
Right.
So there was no duty on them. So they had free ride. What happened that way was a lot of money that should have been produced and spent within the country went to China to produce goods.
Right.
That's number one. If you remember what happened during 2008 when the Great Depression happened, President Bush pumped in $3 trillion into the economy, and $2 trillion went to China to buy Chinese goods.
Right.
So we basically fueled Chinese economy. Having said that, to your question, yeah, when you say, is that a mistake? No. America and Australia are very smart nations, extremely successful nations. They don't do knee-jerk reaction to things. They felt, okay, producing this glass here will probably cost us $10, right?
Right.
Whereas we can have it produced somewhere else
with the less
and have
cost.
lower cost of goods when it can be only 50 cents.
Okay, this is Malik Saab, if you allow me, this is one way benefit. Other way, you have the less opportunity for the workmanship.
Yeah. No, I'm getting there now.
Right.
But they decided to let China handle this glass making, will produce a war fleet that was $1 trillion.
Right.
So how do you balance that? So they went into bigger things than smaller things.
Right.
And then they made sure the life of an ordinary citizen of those countries, I mean US and Australia, is one of the best. We currently in Australia are living in heaven.
Absolutely.
Nothing better than this.
Yeah.
This is as close to
especially
a good and cushy life you can have.
Yeah. Especially once a US citizen is living in Australia.
Yes.
So it means that it is a wonderful place.
This is a blessed country.
Yeah.
You could see that during COVID.
Yeah.
Right? We did not feel there was COVID effect at all.
Yeah.
In fact, Prime Minister Scott Morrison pumped in so much money into people's houses. People had more and surplus.
Yeah.
Our shelves in grocery stores were never empty.
Yeah.
Right? We lived a stress-free social life because everybody had enough to eat. Whereas in China, they produce a lot of this.
Yeah.
But you see how they handled COVID? They shut down the house in which the COVID was.
Yeah.
So it's at the end of its values and what is good for your country.
Yeah.
If today the government decides that we want to produce here, they'll produce here. They will find ways and means. They will amend their manufacturing laws. They will bring in skilled labor. They will tell colleges and universities to produce more skilled labor.
Absolutely.
They will have it. These countries are so blessed and so well governed. It is at the will. They just have to will it and it will happen.
Malik Saab, now I believe, and I will bring him same topic to him. But before that, do you think that manufacturing situation before COVID and after COVID is affected?
Here in Australia?
Yes.
I don't know if Australia there has been any effect. Everything continues to be same. In fact, there was the other day a statement by the government that 90% of the jobs have come back.
Yeah. So coming back, he mentioned that the manufacturing facility bringing outsource is a long-term beneficial decision. Are you agree with it?
That's one perspective. Another perspective that needs to be looked at is the Australian car industry.
Yeah.
We don't manufacture cars at all.
Yeah.
But for probably about 4 or 5 decades, we produced 3 cars in Australia. We produced the Ford, the Holden, and we had a Japanese company here called Mitsubishi.
Right.
The problem in Australia was that the Labor government wanted more work opportunities. So what they did was they gave inducements to those companies to provide workers with work.
Right.
Now, what happened was that their industry was supplemented by taxpayers' money.
Right.
Now, there were thousands had jobs in the southern states. Here in Brisbane, they had a Holden factory as well at Acacia Ridge, and it had about 1,000 odd people there. But what the Morrison government and probably the Turnbull government, the Conservatives, said, well, why are we paying out hundreds of millions of dollars to supplement these companies? If their cars are good enough, why aren't they making enough money to pay for their business arrangements?
Right.
And of course, they withdrew the money.
Right.
So what's happened is Ford's now gone back to America, Holden's gone back to America, Mitsubishi's gone back to Japan.
Yeah.
So I tried to buy a Toyota 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I had to, brand new one, I had to put in an order 6 to 8 months beforehand to make sure I got the car
Right.
for delivery. So that was a long waiting period, whereas before, when cars were made here, I could just go into the showroom and there's the car and I could buy it off the floor, or it would be there within the next few days.
So does there was a difference of price also? You know, you live long, you order before also, you ordering now also. Do you find some difference?
There's always been an argument that there's a difference, but I think Dr. Malik's argument is that because we're giving the resources over,
Yeah.
the countries are providing us with cheaper alternatives.
Yeah.
And certainly the Japanese car is still considered cheap.
Yeah.
Here. The Korean car is still considered cheap. I see the Chinese now, they're trying to do a deal with the Chinese on these battery cars here, which would be very cheap. But the European cars are very expensive and still are. Dr. Bernard would tell you that to get his Mercedes fixed will cost him a lot of money, whereas a local cheaper car, usually the parts are much easier
Much
to get.
easier to much easier to get it.
Yeah, so there is some advantages, but there's some downsides. And Australia basically now, and South Australia, which had the big
Manufacturing
companies,
Yeah.
is basically broke.
broke.
Yeah, they haven't got much money at all.
Ah.
South Australia now has lost, they estimated something like 50,000 people have moved out of South Australia because there's no work.
Ah. So 50,000 people are moving from there.
Yeah. And Mr. Morrison is trying to get the submarine and the ships built back in South Australia to create work opportunities
To get.
for that government.
I think, Dr. Malik, you already mentioned paradise, a land of paradise. Look at this one. You know, a prime minister is looking after that if there is a less job, what they can do it, and they start creating that the options. I think it's a wonderful concept from Dr. Bernard Malik. Look, now we discuss about the U.S. Politics, and we discuss about the manufacturing facility here. The third thing which we like to share with you, that COVID. Do you know that this is for all viewers, that in Australia there are few cases just reported. Everything was going nice, and few cases reported in Victoria, and that came from the Holiday Inn. And we know already there are many things which need to be discussed. We need to be understand for everyone that in COVID, every country has a problems, even though it's isolated country. Australia and New Zealand are the isolated country. Dr. Bernard Malik, you heard about that breach, and then Victoria going on lockdown, and life coming back to the same way. Number one, the life, nobody can predict the life now. Nobody knows, even though I know that we are lucky. Maybe we have that Professor Grant Pitman with us, so we are lucky. We don't have the COVID issue. But actually, if you look at a real story, if it came in the Perth, it came in, and now in Victoria, it transmitted from the worker. They're working in Holiday Inn, working in a quarantine. Do you think it's still the same issue is coming? Number one. And then second part is that how we can control it.
Look, one needs to understand that this is infectious disease. It infects, it spreads by that.
Right.
We are bringing in more and more Australians back home. And some of them are infected.
Yeah.
And we try to give them a very secluded place. But you can't avoid human contact completely. There will be some human contact at some shape or form.
Right.
Either with them directly or with the things that they use. It's going to happen.
Mm.
I think it's better that we get prepared for what is involved with COVID.
Right.
I see in India, and I think we have discussed in other issues, the farm issues happening.
Yeah.
Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people are getting together. No one fears.
No one fears.
And no one is dying.
And
nothing is happening. Maybe we Indians have better immunity because we live harder lives.
Yeah.
Right? But then that's the real world we live in. You can't close your eyes and live in a make-believe world where there will be no COVID.
Right.
As long as there is interaction, there are flights coming in, somebody would have it.
And so we can't stop it. Very good point that we have to live with it and we find out a system in place. Professor Pitman, number one, do you think that there could be a better solution to have a contact to contact of the travelers and then security or service people?
One of the dilemmas that the federal government faces is that they've got to be seen to be a compassionate government.
Right.
Mr. Morrison was critical of the Queensland government being non-compassionate when they wouldn't allow people to come and see their dying mother or father.
Yeah.
So there's a group of people pressuring the government to bring back 50,000 Australians. So the Prime Minister's got to be seen to be compassionate to his own citizens to bring them back.
Right.
The problem that the Prime Minister's got is most of them are in COVID countries, and when he's bringing them back, and at the moment he's got a limit, I think, of 2,000, they want to expand that. Well, to bring them back, you've got to have a process in place to manage them.
Right.
And at the moment, the Victorian Premier is arguing with the Prime Minister to stop bringing them back. So he doesn't want a compassionate society anymore. The Prime Minister's saying, well, no, hang on. This is what we're telling our citizens, that we are going to be compassionate, and that the real issue lies in the management and the administration of the facilities. The Premier is turning around and saying, well, I wouldn't have this problem if you didn't bring so many people back and put them in our facility. So they've had some ideas of putting people out in the deserts into camps.
Yeah.
Was one option, but then you've got to get them there, you've got to transport them, a huge cost. So the debate won't stop until COVID ceases to be a major issue. So, and Britain at the moment's 30% of their population is now vaccinated.
Yeah.
So I think Morrison's trying to see if he can push the vaccination process quicker. So then the issue with the premiers will sort of subside. But at the moment, he sees himself as a compassionate Prime Minister trying to help, and that the Premier probably has not managed well the quarantine locations. Now, there's probably an element of truth on both sides.
Right.
What will happen? I think ultimately they will continue to have lockdowns and lockups. I see in Melbourne they locked up a lot of people for going to the gym. So that's unusual to see police locking up people
on gym
at a gym to keep fit while COVID's on. So I think the issue is, do we want compassion or do we want health?
Dr. Mehran, reason, the base of the compassion, but if you look the international world, we never have stories like Victoria, Queensland, 2 people, 3 lockdown, 4-day lockdown. It does not mean that there are no patients. I believe because we are more sensitive, we are more care. People are looking careful for us. That's why the number are coming. That's why we have the lockup and lockdown. Is it that is the reason, or this is only unlucky states, Victoria, where you have all the issues there?
That's an interesting question.
Don't forget, Victoria has a lot of Indians down there.
Victoria has a lot of Indians and none of them got there. Look, I think it's a lot to do with sensitivity. We have become too sensitive to the numbers.
Right.
Or 2 people, even if somebody says, I think I have it, next day they shut down the sting.
Yeah.
So lot of, and I feel this way. I know a family very close to me in US. They had it, and they did not know. The complete family had it.
Right.
So they went for this vaccine, and when they got the vaccine, that's when they found out they had it because vaccine reacted to it.
Right. If you have the
Because they had active COVID with them, when they got the vaccine, it reacted. So I think we need to also, in terms of compassion, yes, it is because of compassion alone that they want people to be safe. Otherwise, if it was I don't care, then they wouldn't put these restrictions. But even in that element of restriction has to be looked at with compassion. You know the famous case of the girl who wanted to see her father who was dying of cancer.
Yeah.
Queensland Premier took a very strong stand and made some political statements on that, and of course that paid her back, and she won the election. But again, you can't be insensitive to people's aspirations, and relations, and needs, and desire to be with the family, even though there is a COVID situation going on.
Professor Grant, you've been part of the policy, and you know. When any state or any government office writing a policy, there must be hazard analysis, that how much risk we can take it and how much we can move it. Now, he rightly mentioned that we are very sensitive. Even though somebody says, I have COVID, they lock down the states. Do you think that, again, there is no hazard analysis done for the cases that, okay, up to this level, or the current numbers, they say if you have the 2 patient or 20 meter or 1.5 meter, 20 people, this is all number came from the hazard analysis. If this is came from the hazard analysis, then why we are too sensitive?
When you're dealing with health as a policy, you're dealing with people's lives.
Right.
And I think when you're also dealing with doctors, and I hope I'm not too critical here, but they are very logical people. They're not quite as emotive. And so their logic part of the brain comes into policy making. And having sat on major policy development for SARS virus, this is almost identical to the SARS virus issue back 15 years ago. So doctors are basically thinking about the impact on health. And of course, the politicians have to make a determination whether or not they go for the knowledge base that's available in the doctor as against their limited understanding of it. And here in Australia, we probably come from a culture that says if you've got somebody who knows what they're talking about, like a doctor, we don't question it.
Right.
So if the doctor says we need to close the borders, we generally will do it. Mind you, I think that's changing because people are getting onto social media and other doctors are making comments. So there's that aspect. The second one is there's a political interest, and what they do in the policy area is they will do surveying or get reactions from public.
Right.
And it can be internal in the political machinery or from the general public. The third thing is, and it's not talked about a lot, but I think it should be talked about, is the economics, the cost. Queensland has a free health system.
Right.
It's very expensive. If you had COVID in here, it would practically overrun our hospital system.
Right.
And that would be a huge cost to the Queensland government.
Right.
And the Queensland government probably made an economic decision about COVID.
Right.
The other states have a more a less of a free hospital system structure.
Right.
Which means that there was probably more flexibility to put more into the hospitals. But Queensland, different circumstances.
Right. I think we have a good discussion. Thanks to Dr. Malik. and thanks to Professor Pitman. So we cover today the top stories. We cover impeachment of Donald Trump. We discuss about the future of manufacturing in Australia, which is important, especially those people that are planning to migrate in Australia on a skill basis. Ultimately, it is very important for them to know, because sometimes what happens that the people, when they are migrating, they finding or feeling that it's very easy to get them, especially from the manufacturing side people, they are feeling that it's easy to get the job there. That's why it is important to know and watch these kind of programs, so you know and you've been updated what is the future of the manufacturing industry. And thanks to Dr. Bernard and thanks to Professor Pitman, they already explained that why the manufacturing facility has been moved from here and what happened and what was the benefit from there. That was again looking after people. And the third thing which we discussed about this security breach, which resulted in a COVID cases, and then at the end it consequences gone down up to the lockdown of the state. So we should take care of each other. We should take care of our community. We should take care of everything, because the COVID is, as Dr. Professor Pitman just mentioned, it's very costly. Especially in Queensland, it's really costly. It's cost operating in a hospital. That's why they already done the cost, and that's why Dr. Bernard Malik mentioned that. That's why we are very sensitive to it. I believe top story which we discussed today, ultimately these kind of discussion we are bringing for our viewers as informative shows, informative programs, and I believe our people, they ultimately going to take the benefit from it. It's over from Shoaib, Zaidi. Thank you, Dr. Bernard Malik. Thank you, Professor Pitman. And next time we will come back with different top story. Till then, it's a goodbye from Shoaib. Thank you very much.